Greetings, brothers and sisters. I got a bunch of just random stuff from things I've been building up on my toolbar. Some of them are funny. One of them's great. I'll save that for the end. It's everything I talk about with the "Just Let It Happen" movement. It sort of has fizzled out, but maybe coming back around. Who knows? It is like some sort of a group of communists, socialists. And it just shows you that they're incapable of any sort of leadership. Anyways, I'll come back to that at the end. Here's the first headline. This is from November 17th, so I guess 2 weeks ago. Democrats rebrand Build Back Better bill to counter inflation concerns. Well, you can't spend more money, print more money, and talk about how it's anti-inflationary, right? And everything they've been doing is about spending. And the inflation, which they've been hiding, which should be a lot worse than it is now catching up more and more. And it's your new reality because it's, it should be worse than it is. It should be at 50% or 100% or 200%. I don't know what the actual percentage in terms of the devaluation of the buying power of the dollar is, but it's more substantial than they've been letting on, right? They're trying to get as much of this, bailout stuff going as they could because there's other economic issues, and they all want to glom as much of this money before America tanks. So everyone should be aware of that. Then I saw this, Egyptian Path of God reopened amid spectacular celebration. And it looks pretty Illuminati. Let's start back here. We'll do it with the Luxor. I don't know where this is. This is something to do with the Temple of Luxor, with the Temple of Karnak. Has taken 2 decades to evacuate and restore a 3,000-year-old temple. Not much description here in terms of where this is or why they're doing it. With the drums working, we got all this, here's the obelisk. These inscriptions. There are these obelisks. Everyone knows about the pyramids, but there are these obelisks. There's one in London. There's one in New York City. There's one, of course, there's ancient Egyptian ones, and then there's ones like the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. And so there's these various obelisk places that have nothing to do with Egypt, right? That should have, it shouldn't have anything to do with Egypt. Of course, the Freemasons were big into the Egyptian stuff. And, the whispers of the brighter world messages from the Heartfulness system talk about how the pyramids are interplanetary relay systems built by higher developed, technologically developed human beings of a different sort than the people that make up our genetic makeup, right? Where we are a slave race. So this is the fascination with this Egyptian stuff because it comes from some sort of master race or whatever. Like slaves and masters. I mean, not a master race in the sense of like some sort of parenting race of beings that are more technologically advanced and have left this planet. And so, this is some of the truths that they don't tell you and why they're so fascinated with this culture and all the stuff to do with Freemasonry and Illuminati stuff and all the rest of it. So there's this at the Luxor. They're having their little celebration here. Hilaria Baldwin jokes she's proud of her 6-year-old son for spelling the F word. There's some sort of Instagram post she has. And he's proud. I'm kind of proud of his spelling or reading is silver lining, question marks. And so she really likes to be famous. Here's another post here. Alec Baldwin's wife, Hilaria, reflects on challenging year. Didn't think I was going to make it through it. Well, does that mean you're suicidal? What do you mean? You were just going to randomly die and quit and collapse and be homeless and no longer be famous on Instagram and married to this handsome young lad, right? What does that mean you weren't going to make it through? Like you were just going to quit? That just shows you the fortitude of the modern celebrity. Ice-T and Coco's daughter Chanel adorably teach her grandmother how to twerk. Well, I know who Ice-T is. I kind of might understand who Coco is. Is she some sort of, one of these fake models? I guess this is her granddaughter here. And this is her up top with a video teaching her grandmother how to twerk. This is, where we are as a culture. Dance camp with Chanel. And I guess that Chanel kind of looks like Ice-T there. And she's teaching her grandmother how to twerk because it's 2021. And the end is nigh. Madonna slams Instagram for censoring her nipple in photo series. She angrily reposts the photo series using a heart over the body part that's so upset social media platform. And this is why she's Madam Expiration Date. There's the photo in question. Now there's a heart because there's some sort of nipple gate going on there. And, anything for a little bit more attention. And it should be sad, but it's sort of more like a vampire withering in the wind. George Clooney on Hollywood's changing culture. You can't get away with being a D word anymore. I guess you said dick there. Just because you're a boss, it doesn't mean you get to S on people. I've been the boss and the guy getting S'd on, Clooney said in a new interview in the Times. You can't get away with being a D anymore. You'd get ratted out. You mean, well, what do you mean by ratted out? Like, that's a mob term, right? The people who would tell the truth about an abusive behavior, and that's not ratting, right? That's righting the wrongs. Did Harvey Weinstein get ratted out, right? The rats, that's saying that somebody's a rat for telling people that you suck and you're abusive behind the scenes. And so, interesting point of words for George Clooney, who's such a player and part of the, all these bad organizations. George Clooney's always on the wrong side of things, and for the most part, his movies are they suck and they're depressive, right? There's no point to life. That's the theme in his movies. Chris Cuomo is taking it on the chin this morning. Chris Cuomo faces scrutiny at CNN over text showing lengths he went to aid bro Andrew amid sex scandal. Now, this whole thing is just like any other news item. Why are they covering this and not covering, say, I don't know, any number of these other similar sort of scandals like Hunter Biden and all his stuff and his emails. I mean, New York Post covers it, but other mainstream news organizations don't.
Text messages yesterday that show that CNN anchor Chris Cuomo was heavily involved in the response to former Governor Andrew Cuomo's sexual harassment allegations, and even looked into intel on at least one of the accusers. On March 4th, he texted, "I have a lead on the wedding girl." The wedding girl is Anna Ruck, who accused Andrew Cuomo of trying to kiss her. And CNN really...
He had a lead. Chris Cuomo had a lead. That's the story. Chris Cuomo had an actual lead on a story.
Released a statement in response. They say, "We will be having conversations and seeking additional clarity about their significance as they relate to CNN over the next several days." So
CNN, if there was any of this stuff was real, this would be so embarrassing for CNN because, Chris Cuomo is supposed to be this hyper liberal dude, but he's not. He's been caught over and over again going after those dudes for calling him Fredo in an aggressive way, wanting to fight him. And then all this stuff he made an off-color joke about being, that was anti-LGBTQ. Remember? Well, he made that joke. I covered that a while ago. And so he's just a fake and a fraud, like all the rest of them. And CNN isn't real news because they should have fired him for this in the first place. And I'm glad that they didn't because he's, fun for me. This whole CNN network I get so much joy out of covering how bad they suck. So I'm glad they didn't fire him. But they should have. They should have fired him for this scandal. And the scandal should have never happened the way they promoted. He promoted his brother, and they promoted his brother as a hero of COVID. And then if they found out that he killed 9,000 senior citizens by putting sick people in with them in nursing homes, and then covered it up. And so he should have went to jail for that. But that would cause all kinds of economic crisis in New York City and state and so much more, right? So then they took the hero, the awards. He won an Emmy, you remember all that kind of stuff. And Chris Cuomo was being celebrated for having COVID and being in his basement. Those were glory days. And now it's all falling apart because they had to get him for something else, right? They had to get rid of Andrew Cuomo because, he was sitting on 9,000 manslaughter deaths. And so now this is even being covered by Huffington Post. Text transcripts show Chris Cuomo played bigger role in earlier defense of his brother. And so now CNN, either they suck at scrutinizing their employees because they said they did an investigation 6 months ago. So they're either they failed in scrutinizing their employee or, they covered it up for him. And so if CNN was considered real news, then this would be a problem. But, everyone kind of knows they're a joke and no one's watching them. So, but they should have been fired 6 months ago for all this. But he should have been fired or never hired in the first place because he's not a journalist, right? This is just exposing that. It says here, Fauci says Omicron may not be a big deal, but U.S. should prepare for the worst. And then there's this one, Omicron may cause milder symptoms, but experts aren't breathing a sigh of relief yet. Why Omicron? I know everyone's saying that it's an anagram for moron, but where are they coming up with these names, right? It's such there's a component of it being branding and, there's an advertising marketing component to these things. Now, whatever my wife and I just had, I talked about this yesterday in my other video. We thought it was the flu in the beginning. Body aches and fever were, the big part. For me, it was a little bit more gut related. But we both had trouble eating, and we had what was the traditional, the first COVID back in April of 2020. And whatever we had the second time and the first time, we're not the same animal, right? And this thing, like I said, we thought it could have been the flu in the beginning, but whatever it was changed and it lingered and it was, clearly something else, right? And nothing like we had the first time. And so now they're saying this is a new variant that hasn't reached the United States yet. And I don't know, their official story is so whack. And, now they're saying, well, it's not that severe, but everyone should panic about it anyway. These variants are supposed to weaken over time. They're supposed to, in terms of severity and the rest of it, maybe they become easier to contract, but they have, in terms of their symptoms, are less, right? But they're still pushing this fear brigade. Jojo Magoo was on yesterday about it. And so, but I'll talk about that more later when I fully recover. But it was, it's something to me they're just releasing a series of biological weapons and, calling it all COVID, right? Barbados cuts ties with Queen Elizabeth II, becomes a republic in dazzling ceremony. So, this is kind of a big deal because you have the British Commonwealth. And now they are, the British Commonwealth is, I guess like 52 something countries. And Barbados is one of them. Don't know much about it. But with each country cutting ties with the British Commonwealth, that would restructure the power dynamics of the British family and the rest of it, right? The Queen, which would be, a good thing. Like, she still has the power to shut down the Canadian Parliament, and they own lands all over the world. But these countries, anytime they want to, can get rid of their British overlords, and, it'd be good to see. So just when you thought JoJo was completely gone, this is their backup plan.
Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more.
Wow. Like, what a brilliant economic mind. So this is my favorite, story of this whole thing I'm covering. My wife sent me this 3 or 4 days ago, then we watched it together. I got a longer version of it. But here was the original tweet. It says, 0 chance we lose the Civil War to these people. And this is the Democratic Socialist Convention. I believe somewhere in California, maybe D.C., who cares? But it's such a just let it happen type of moment, because you have people in the truth community that are constantly in a state of fear and panic about how their whole world, whatever, people's experience and understanding of reality is being just rewritten by a liberal agenda, right? And this is what I've been saying forever, that the people who are, really into this culture, Hollywood, this Hollywood culture, Hollywood morality, they can't function. They're broken. I've said this over and over again. And, let's just watch it because you'll see for yourself here.
Quick point of privilege. Quick point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Guys, first of all, James Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. I just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making...
So your kryptonite is chatter.
it very difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all fresh and ready to go, but can we please just keep the chatter to a minimum? It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade.
Thanks, comrade. So they don't have the ability to deal with chatter. That they can't focus, they can't function, and so it has to be a chatter-free environment. It's going to come up multiple times throughout the presentation.
Okay, is there a speaker against name, chapter, pronouns?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Okay.
Quick point of privilege once again. Quick point of privilege once again.
So there's a lot of this point of personal privilege. They have this, way of a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of ways of controlling the way people express themselves. But clearly, they can't do it. They can't function, right? This whole meeting apparently is like this. Like, they get nothing done. It's all about this kind of stuff, which of course it would be.
Hi, James Jackson, Sacramento DSA, he, him. I have already asked people to be mindful of the chatter of their comrades who are sensitive to sensory overload, and that goes double for the heckling and the hissing.
Clearly, the hissing has to stop. You guys, you hissers out there, stop hissing.
It is also triggering to my anxiety. Like, the be comradely isn't just for, like, let's keep things civil or whatever. It's
the constant hissing is triggering this dude's anxiety. He's got anxiety, and when you hear hissing, it gets triggered.
So that people aren't going to get triggered, and so that it doesn't affect their performance as a delegate, okay?
So I've been saying this for years, and I talked about how 2020 was the year of the broken. where the brokenness of people is being celebrated and everyone's supposed to accommodate other people's brokenness. But it's completely one-sided, right? Because this is very annoying, this constant interruption and point of personal privilege if you're a part of this meeting, because anything could be a trigger. What's a trigger to one person, and this is triggering to other people, right? You know, you're constantly saying, I can't handle this, I can't handle that. Can you guys all accommodate my, whatever's going on here, my brokenness? I've said this before. These people can't run a civilization. You need hardworking people that are very tolerant, that are able to sacrifice and think about other people's needs, right? And who show up and get the job done even under undesirable circumstances. Show up at work when they're sick and going through emotional difficulties and are able to soldier forth, right? With the Alec Baldwin's wife, Hilaria, right? Saying she didn't think she could make it through that very tough year as a rich woman because, she got outed and her husband shot somebody. She didn't think she could make it, right? And so this is what I've been saying for years. You need stable people who are in, loving family environments, who are connected to God and nature, who can endure, and we don't have that. And so all these people in the truth community and the right-wing people who are constantly flipping out that their world is being taken away from them by this group of people who can't function, right? They can't function. And this is, a society, a system that's collapsing. When you have a strong system, you can carry weak people, broken people through it. But when the system collapses and everyone has to fight and claw and, survive, you're going to see all these people are just, they can't do it. They can't handle hissing, right? How are they going to handle anything that's really traumatic and difficult to push through? And, it gets even worse here.
Your need to express yourself is important, but your need to express yourself should not trump or over.
I see that no one's clapping for me. It could be because I'm not engaging, but it also is because everyone's doing this. And that's really important because those loud bursts of noise, even though this is a noisy space, when we can do something like reducing that, that's really important. So please don't clap, shoot up these. We have.
You can't see it in this video clip, but the shooting up is like doodly doodly doo. Like they put their hands up in the air and they wiggle their fingers, which why isn't, that could be a trigger to somebody else, right? Like this is where it just never ends. You understand this? Like, there's the guy saying you have a need to express yourself, but it doesn't trump my need to have anxiety. And so, everyone's supposed to accommodate all the other triggers of people, but it's completely one-sided, right? There's a selfishness here, a myopia, it's very myopic and very selfish.
A lot of disabled comrades, and a lot of those are invisible disabilities. You don't know who it is that is having a more difficult time navigating this space, and this space was not created with all of their needs in mind. So it's up to us to modify that space to make sure that everybody is able to move in the ways.
Hidden disabilities. And they just keep on growing, right? They're going to, by next year, or whatever, this is 2019, by the time, rolls around for a new presidential election, there'll be so many more triggers and disabilities, right? Hidden disabilities.
That they need to move. And additionally with the noise issue, like avoid hissing, avoid waving.
Come on, the hissing just got to stop. There's, it's a trigger for so many people. They just can't, they have an intolerance to hissing.
Banners, right? Because there's all sorts of things. If you don't know what to do, show up these, right? I'm sure there's lots of ways that we can communicate to each other without needing to rely on something that's going to hurt somebody else. We have quiet rooms that are available. There's a range of options of these, right? Please don't.
We got quiet rooms that are hissing free. There's no hissing in these quiet rooms.
Don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right?
Exactly. No hissing in these quiet rooms and no aggressive scent. And this, you need a passive scent. It's too loud. And so these quiet rooms, there can be no aggression in the way that you smell.
We don't want to put people in stressful situations that they don't consent to, right? And there are right-wing infiltrators who are trying to get in here, but it's going to be really traumatic for people if we're not making an affirmative
Beware the right-wing infiltrators. They're coming in here with their aggressive scent and their hissing.
effort to de-escalate each other and de-escalate ourselves, right? Take a deep breath.
You have to de-escalate. Everyone's escalated all the time. We need to de-escalate. You got to de-escalate others and yourselves. The lack of hissing and passive sense.
And feel better before you say anything. Don't really talk to anybody who doesn't have a credential, especially if they claim to be from the press. You have no idea who that person is. Please do not talk to anybody who identifies themselves as a member of the press without having credentials. Don't talk to cops. Don't talk to MAGA assholes.
So there it is, right? The MAGA assholes. Like, it's the big hypocrisy of the thing. Because they have disabilities, hidden disabilities, right? This group, they have triggers. They all have their sensitivities, and everyone's supposed to accommodate those sensitivities. Their psychological and emotional brokenness. But people who are Trump supporters are just assholes. Like, what about the triggers, the way that you might be triggering MAGA people, that they're getting triggered? You're causing anxiety. And your theories and your way of being is causing anxiety and difficulties. Well, are you going to accommodate them? Are you going to change your behavior to accommodate them? No, they're just assholes. We're broken people with real sensitivities, but those guys are just assholes, right? So their whole thing is, one giant hypocrisy, that they can be triggered and they have anxieties and they have problems, but people who follow Trump are just assholes, right?
We're almost there. But thank you. We are going to be visited tomorrow by
3 ghosts.
Some MAGA protesters. Is there anybody here who's done abortion clinic escort work? By all means, don't talk to cops if there are cops there for any reason at all, right? And if you do see someone talking to cops, let the marshals know. We are safe and we are strong because there's power in collective work.
So I'm very sensitive to loud noises. Like, I don't like crowds, and it's gotten more so since I've done the heartfulness system, and certainly since getting older, right? Having migraines and things like this, bright lights, flashing lights, things like, crowd-related things. And I just don't go to those places. Like, I'd never expect them to accommodate somebody like me, right? Like, I really want to go to a rave, but, I don't want to, hear loud music and flashing lights, right? It's not for you. And so, I can tolerate things. I mean, I went to rock concerts and rap concerts when I was younger, and especially when I was younger. But all that stuff, especially loud noises, I have sensitive ears or whatever. And I just don't like being around crowds. I mean, I like it for a little bit. Like, if I haven't been to a big city in a while and I go to a city and there's lots of people, or, around Christmas time, I, get this, usually like one day a year, I get like Christmas spirit. And, it might be snowing a little bit. It'll be a nice winter day or whatever. And, all the Christmas lights are out. And like, I'd like to go for a mall for a little bit. Then I'm, over it after about 10 minutes. I mean, Walmarts, places like that. I go in and get out as quick as possible. But I certainly don't expect to be, accommodated, right, for my sensitivities. And being sensitive in the heartfulness system is a good thing, right? It's something that's cultivated. And I can function through all those things. It's just, I'll get a slight headache, or just, it's unpleasant or whatever. Don't enjoy it. But, my choices are, like, if I'm going to go to a beach, I'll go to a less crowded beach. I mean, beaches are better in general. I avoid the crowded places and the, places I don't enjoy going, But what you have with these, various groups of people with their brokenness and their multifaceted sensitivities, they expect everyone else to accommodate their stuff, right? They want to be in, these groups, and they want to function as some sort of, like he said, there's power in numbers, right? but they want it, on their terms and their terms alone. They're intolerant of other groups. They're intolerant of right-wing people and Trump people and, cops, obviously, here or whatever it is, right? But they expect all these other groups to adhere to their, multifaceted demands of what they can and can't do. And that's not how, groups work, right? That's not how, the massive, there's always going to be a lot of noise and a lot of things that will trigger more sensitive people. And you have to figure out how to cope. And one of those things is avoid groups. That's what I would do. Like, I would never think it's the group's responsibility to accommodate any kind of, specific issue that I might have. And that's not how groups work, right? Like, it's just everyone has to be tolerant of each other and has to adapt. Like, that's the whole idea behind a group mentality. The one thing that I would say about all this, right? And I've talked about this as a just let it happen, that these group of people aren't really a threat. You understand this? Because they can barely function. They can barely get through a meeting, and most of it's meta stuff about, their sensitivities and their various, their triggers and their intolerance to other people. This is a group that's supposed to be liberal and progressive and, futuristic, right? Evolved. That's how this has been presented, this Hollywood morality. But we know from these Hollywood celebrities, going to Madam Expiration Date being the number one, poster child for this, they're so needy. They're just so needy. She needs so much input. She needs so much material validation from her fans and the media and the critics and us, all of it, right? They just need so much from the world to prop them up. And this is, everybody trying to be like these celebrities, this orientation to the world. And it just gets more and more complex and more low functioning and more, permission to say, all right, I have all this stuff that I have, psychological needs and issues. And if I'm not, if the system doesn't accommodate me, I can't participate. I can't contribute. And so this group of people is, completely dependent on a system that does everything for them, which is collapsing. That's the system we see collapsing. I say this over and over again. And that people in the truth community, or people in general all across the board, they have a lack of faith. One of the great teachings in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages in the Heartfulness system is that everything's accounted for on a spiritual level. And so we don't have to be the arbiters of making other people suffer for their mistakes. You think about all the stuff that's on the internet and on the media. It's about people wanting other people to get, their just due, to pay for their crimes, to pay for their mistakes, right? But no one wants to see that for themselves, But in terms of my own experience and what, teachings of the Heartfulness system, everything's recorded. Nobody gets away with anything. You have to suffer whatever mistakes you make. You have to, redeem yourself. Not only suffer through them, but the consequences. But you have to go and, you have the same problems the same situation's going to appear in your future in one way or another. And you have to redeem yourself. You have to, it's just like a video game. You have to do it the right way. And so every time you do it the wrong way, you're building a future where you have to, you're going to face that same problem, and you get a second chance or third chance. It gets harder each time. So that's one of the wonderful teachings of samskaras. And it frees you up from having to worry about other people, suffering for their mistakes and the suffering that's going to happen collectively to humanity. Like what we're going to have to face in the future and what's happening right now is going to be extreme. It's going to be overwhelming for people. And as Babaji said in one of the Whispers messages, the guilty, the innocent will be punished along with the guilty. Like it's, the way the world's going to be, it's going to suck for everybody. Some people have made more mistakes than others, and some of those souls aren't going to be allowed back. So, they're not going to participate in the building of the rebuilding of the world and the redeeming of a species. And so, but they're in a worse situation, right? The people who are, less guilty, who are doing less damage, I mean, there's a couple of things to this, because people who are good people will suffer almost immediately for mistakes that they make. And there'll be immediate repercussions. And that's a blessing, because, they don't have to carry on more baggage. Like people who are just doing wrong all the time and are disconnected from God, and especially if they have power and they're, negatively affecting the atmosphere and doing bad things all the time, they're just storing away more and more, crap they have to deal with in the future. Whereas people who are more spiritual and, better people, they're not making nearly as many mistakes, and they have to confront and clean out the mistake in real time. And so it's, there's an advantage there. They don't have all this heavy, karmic burden, samskaric burden they're carrying with them for future, to deal with maybe in 10 lifetimes from now. And so that's one of the reasons why it seems unfair that good people get punished quicker or have consequences quicker than people who are, doing evil all the time. But either way, none of these things really matter, right? Because we have a system that's collapsing that can't be saved. And so who cares about any of this stuff? That's why I keep on saying, why get triggered by it? I mean, there's all these triggers that people in the truth community and the right have to all this stuff. And, that's just another sign of low functioning. Because right now it's about, what are you going to do to switch things up, right? Obviously the system has failed. This is a failed experiment. So what are you going to do now? Like, what are you going to do for yourself and for your children and future versions of yourself to make sure that the world's a better place, right? That there isn't, all this demonic, deviant conditions here that we're manifesting collectively that are taking us in the wrong direction. Like, at what point you say, all right, I got to change what I'm doing. Why am I worried about what, all these other people are? Because it's just, they're obviously screwed, right? Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.